What's up everyone, it's Epictastic Joshua here. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here and if you're a returning member, this is going to be my thoughts on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Welcome back to my channel, my Epictastic Nation. This is Epictastic Joshua, of course. I talk movies, TV, and on a few occasions music and anime. But the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this is of course directed by Kerry Skoglund. This is created by Malcolm Spellman. This is the second TV series in the MCU that shares continuity with the series for Disney Plus, and this is one of the many TV shows of the MCU TV show catalog. This stars Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Wyatt Russell, Danny Ramirez, Emily Van Camp, Florence Kasumba, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Don Cheadle, and Aaron Kellyman. In the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we see Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, and Sam Wilson are a mismatched duo who team up for a global adventure that will test their survival skills as well as their patience. When it comes to this show, I was looking forward to it because it was taking place after Avengers Endgame, and I did see this when it initially came out in 2021, but I never fully got a chance to review it for one reason or the other. So I decided I was going to wait and hold it off until Captain America 4, and I wanted to wait till I feel like I was ready to talk about it. But I wanted to rewatch it again to see how I felt since the last time I watched it. So I took it upon myself to watch all 6 seasons. I mean all 6 episodes, of course. And I wanted to see how it was. And now, having rewatched and revisited this show, I can still say that I still very much like this show, but I like the show a lot more, but I still have some issues with it. But I don't think this is nowhere near as one of the worst shows as everyone said it is. I know some people don't like it as much. I know some people say it's not this should have been a movie, but honestly, I will say, watching this again, this is one of the better shows of the MCU. Now, I will say this, in terms of the story here is one of my first big positives. And this is also a negative. So I will say the positives about this first, and then I'll go back into talking about the negatives when I go into my issues with the show. I actually do like the fact that this is a world post Endgame, and we're seeing a lot of how the legacy of Captain America is being preserved after the events of Avengers Endgame. It's surprisingly mature, it's entertaining, it's great enough, it's very engaging, tackling some real life issues about symbolism, racism, American history, heroes and an image. But I really do like a lot of what this series is going for here. In the moments where it does great, it's developing Bucky and develops Sam Wilson and shows who they are outside of being the most trusted allies of Steve Rogers. I do like that here. With Sam, we get to see him struggle to accept the new role of Captain America, and if he is willing to take it head on. And like when it comes to it, because this is something that is pretty kind of relevant, especially nowadays. Again, not a political person, we not gonna talk politics here. I don't do that here. But I will say that was one of my favorite things about the show. Even on the first time watching it, I was really interested with, does he want to take this responsibility? Does he want this on his head? And I do like the fact that it shows the current issues such as the radicalization of America, the PTSD and the racism, but I was a little nervous about it because I was like, great, this is finna be Black Christmas 2019 all over again. But no, they did take the time to focus on the more grounded nature and a more mature nature. And for that, is one of the more mature shows of this ever-growing cinematic universe, which I actually really enjoy and I really like a lot. And it really did make it satisfying and make it entertaining enough. So I definitely quite like what this was going for and what it was trying to do in terms of Sam. In terms of Bucky's part, I was actually very surprised what they were doing. So I say I was surprised by it because I have been someone who up until this point has given Bucky a lot of shit, especially for what he did in Captain America Civil War in terms of what happened with him getting involved in killing Tony's parents, and that pissed me off and made me hate the character for a little bit. And then the stuff with Hydra and all that, that is the stuff that I was really hesitant to give a chance to when I first watched this. But having watched it in 2021 and rewatching it for this, I actually really quite like that stuff. I actually think that works in the show's favor, and it works very well there. We see him struggling with abandoning his lifestyle as the Winter Soldier entirely, and how did that work for him. And I also really think it really does spark some good discussion and some bad discussion for those who don't like the show, about interesting conversations about how very topical issues it handles, which watching the behind the scenes documentary, they made it very clear that's what they wanted to do. But I really think it does a good job dealing with the personal struggles, which is one of my favorite moments of this. And I also really liked a lot, for the most part, it wants to dive into the world and how the world has changed since the advance of Infinity War. And in some aspects, I think it does it very well, especially with the character of John Walker, which I found to be pretty interesting throughout this entire series. And he has a tragic past, and it is someone that has been forced into something he clearly doesn't belong in. And I love that from the get-go, this entire series. There's a lot of complexity and a lot of ambition there, and it's a lot more frustrating at times watching it and infuriating, but you just like to see a lot of where it goes for there, and I pretty much enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed the fact that it does shines. He's the one that shines the most, and I felt that should have been more. And I also did find a lot of that interesting. So a lot of that story in the interesting self, I think, makes it for a very, very great story of this. And I very much really enjoyed a lot of what they did here. And that was just also pretty interesting as well. I like a lot of more what they tried to do with some characters, like some of the utilized characters. Like, honestly, I will say it did do some stuff here, which there are some characters that are reintroduced here where it gets fun for the most part, but it does play into another part of the criticism there. And I really did enjoy a lot of memorable moments that it has in terms of the story. So the story is really my favorite part of it for the most part. I will also say the direction is also pretty good. Of course, you got Kari Scollin. She does a good job in terms of what she's able to do, and I very much love the directing that she does. She's able to tackle this story a lot on it beforehand for the most part, but I also really enjoy the action side of things, which I really did like. The action is very well done action, and it's also pretty memorable action. And also, there is some great moments there. Besides the action, were the moments of intrigue, the moments of political aspects here that I really enjoy. Even a monologue that a lot of people like to crap on of. I love the fact that they decided we're gonna have Captain America say a monologue that is gonna be interesting. And for some people, I've seen some reactions to that monologue. Some people, they don't really like it, they think it's too much. But for me personally, I feel like this monologue is something that needs to be said. Especially, it's a great monologue that I really thought held its own. And for all 6 episodes, I was fully invested into it, and I was really enjoying it. Seeing how this is handed on, and I very much love it here. The fact that, like I said, we see nothing but them explore Bucky's side, where it's nothing but fight in the last 100 years, and can't avoid the trauma he's been through, but also this, of course, being awesome for Falcon, of course, and seeing what more he can do, and taking the shield as being a burden to the character. And the fact that they did talk about during the making of documentaries that Falcon questions how a black man representing a country doesn't represent him, question it, and takes a lot to become the new Captain America. And Anthony Mackie, I'll say, he was hesitant about doing this series because he thought it wouldn't match the quality of the first 3 Captain America movies, or they didn't, and also he thought this was going to be a failure, but he was won over by the scripts. So I very much like that part. And I'll say this, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, individually, I think both gives a really strong performance in their individual scenes and their individual moments. Anthony Mackie especially that monologue, which I thought was a very good monologue and fantastic. But he also has his badass moments, and you do buy him as someone who would take the mantle. We'll see how his movie does once I review it and watch it. But I will say him individually was very good. I loved Sebastian Stan once again. I've always loved him as Bucky, even in the first Avenger. But going back to this, adjusting to life after this is actually really competent, and I love the fact that this was a fantastic decision day to go. Also giving him some backstory of what he's doing, which I've hinted at. He did a very good job, and I thought that he was great as well. But them together, the two of them are like the dynamic duo of this. They have a lot of fun in this as well. Wyatt Russell is John Walker. I thought he was very intimidating. He is extremely aggressive in the role, but I look forward to seeing what more they could do with him. There is one moment in particular where he is just extremely brutal here, and that I actually thought was pretty entertaining, and he did a very good job as well. I will say Erin Kellyman, I like her in other things like The Green Knight and such, but here she's fine for what she is given. But my biggest criticism with her, which we'll get into with the negatives, is that she kind of feels pretty generic, of course. And I really will say that's one of my other big issues when it comes to it, is that she felt pretty generic. Danny Ramirez is Joaquin Torres. He is pretty cool in the movie. I thought he had some nice chemistry with Anthony Mackie in the series. Danny Ramirez does a pretty strong job for what is required out of him, and he does a very good job. You have Don Cheadle coming back as James Rhodey Rhodes, which I liked. Daniel Brühl as Helmut Zemo. He's still good in the role, but I feel like he really needs to get his upcomings. But I feel like they didn't do a whole lot with him as much as they should have here. Emily Van Camp, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say it. She is good in this movie for what she's, miniseries for what she's given. And even though the character has developed on screen, and I like a lot what they try to do with her in this, and they wanted to put her in the 3 and 4, but given the vast of other characters already in there, they said no. But they decided to continue her story pretty early on here, and I very much like that Emily Van Camp was back here. Of course, Emily Van Camp is very attractive. I'll say that without hesitation. But I will also say that she does a very strong job in terms of her character in between the events of this and the start of the series. She's in a dark place here. She has a chip on her shoulders, and they do explore a lot of that in here. But I felt like after a while, she was kind of being useless here. After a while. But I'll say her as Sharon Carter was still very good here. She has been in hiding since Civil War. They wanted to show a more evolved version, scorned by the intelligence community, and I very much like that. And the fact that she goes rogue, I very much enjoyed that. I just wish it was explored more. Obviously, is needing to be said. Post-editing Joshua here. Of course, Emily Van Camp is a lovely woman, but we're not just talking about her attraction-wise. I want to legit give my thoughts on her performance as Sharon Carter, which I have. But if we're talking about Emily Van Camp through attraction-wise, at least let me allow these clips to describe it.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Oh, come on. I'm just saying.
I get it.
No.
I get it. Meow.
Correct.
Also have Florence Kasumba as Ao, Julia Louis-Drivers as Fontaine. You also got Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley, which I thought was actually very cool. And I also very much liked a lot of the acting in here. So the acting is great here. Cinematography, and for the budget, $150 million, Marvel using practical effects for the most part. Go back to this. You can still use your CGI, but you don't always need to have a big skyrocketed budget unless, of course, you're doing something highly ambitious. This does look like $150 million, and it is well spent. They're not gonna half-ass it. The editing is still very good. There's still some good handheld, hand-to-hand combat scenes. There's still some good fighting moments. There's some good action, of course. I did enjoy the action. I also like the score by Henry Jackman, which the score is still very, very good here. I very much love a lot of what the score is going for her, and I very much really enjoy it for what you get here. And there's not a lot of special effects here, so that's also something I can definitely appreciate here. And I can also say all 6 episodes for the most part are pretty good. They're very good. Some I like more than others, especially the finale, but I did enjoy a lot what this is going for here. The transitioning, we got to talk about some of my criticisms here. Like I said, one of my biggest criticisms is in the story. While the great things I praise in the story are great, there are some things I wish that we delve more into. Agent 13, the power broker, is one of them, because it just feels like you get somewhere with Emily Van Camp, but there's not a lot more they tend to do with her, and it kind of made her useless here. You could have cut her out of this and it would have made an entirely different difference. There are a few moments where some of the political intrigue can be a little bit much for some people. That is just a small nitpick. When it's trying to do a lot more going on here in terms of the struggle and what's going on with the blip, it does the blip stuff aftermath well, and John Walker is done very well. But where this show did kind of lose me on the rewatch is the Flag Smashers here. They are pretty much disappointing, and Carly as a villain. Carly is one of the weakest villains in this MCU. And no disrespect to the actress, I'm sure this is how she's playing it. She did fine for what she's given, but she is just about as one note as a junkyard dog as we get here. And it felt like there could have been so much more to her. You could have had hit something a lot more compelling though, which they do hint at, but it never really fully goes dive into it, which is going to be another one of my issues, which is frustrating as you're watching this. What it really wants to do story wise in some things, like some fun returns like Agent 13 and Baron Zemo, it just kind of struggles a bit, like. And this is going to lead into my issue that I've been having with a lot more with these MCU TV shows, is that doing just 6 episodes for a TV series is just not enough time. You need at least 8 to 10 to 14 episodes, or at least 16 episodes. I'm not saying you have to go 22 episodes route, because like I said, and I probably have not said this, sometimes 18 to 22 episodes can be a little bit too much. But I feel like if you're going to be delving into some important stories like this in some of these Marvel shows or even DC shows, you should be taking the steps further to want to make sure you get a full satisfying experience. And I think 10 episodes or at least 14 could have delved a lot more into what we're going into, and that is one of the biggest disappointments and the biggest frustrations, is that alone. The pacing, of course, I will say I don't have a problem with the pacing, but some episodes felt a lot more smaller pace than most. So this is one of the situations where I will say, like I said, if we had more episodes, this would be a lot more better in terms of what you're doing here. But overall, I will say I do still very much like this show. So overall, this show, it does work a lot in its great moments, and it just goes for it in terms of its great moments. I love the story for the most part of dealing with a life after Endgame, dealing with Sam and Bucky's own personal situation. I love the John Walker stuff, whereas stuff like the Agent 13 stuff and also Baron Zemo and the stuff with the Flag Smashers and Carly, and with a few more episodes, this would be a lot more well regarded. But for what we got, I definitely still enjoy this, and I definitely still like a lot of what you are giving me here. So I will say, if you are someone who has seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier and you didn't like it as much, I definitely recommend it. I'll just say this now. This is something that I feel like it does have its issues, and my issues are standing with this, but I will overall say it does do a good job at what it set out to do, and you pretty much got what you wanted here. So it is pretty much a good continuation of Captain America and such, but I feel like we just fixed some of those issues. It could have been great for a lot of other people, but it's still great to me. So if you have yet to see this, it's on Disney Plus, and it's also on physical media, so definitely watch, and you'll be pretty entertained. So overall, I still really enjoy The Falcon and the Winter Soldier for what it is. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay Epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.